It was a peaceful September afternoon, with soft golden sunlight filtering through the trees along the luxurious rodeo drive. The street buzzed with activity, where sharp-dressed business people and glamorous celebrities walked by, radiating an air of elegance. Suddenly, a man stepped into the high-end fashion boutique, Elegance Couture. He looked entirely out of place among the glamorous crowd. A worn leather jacket, faded jeans, and scuffed boots made him stand out in the store's gleaming, opulent surroundings. His face bore a hint of weariness, but his gentle eyes quietly scanned the store as though searching for something truly special. Blake Carter, a young store associate, stood behind the front desk. His sharp eyes landed on the man, scrutinizing him with icy judgment. Blake thought to himself, another ordinary tourist, here just to take photos and gawk at things they can't afford. With a smug sense of duty, he strode toward the man, a fake smile plastered on his face. "Excuse me, sir," Blake began, his tone cold and laced with disdain. "This is a luxury boutique. We only serve clients with prior appointments. Perhaps you might find somewhere more appropriate." His words cut like a knife, sharp and filled with prejudice, making the air in the store feel suddenly heavy. The man paused, his calm, kind eyes meeting Blake's harsh gaze. There was no anger in his demeanor, just a quiet, patient silence. "I'm just looking for a gift," he replied softly, his voice gentle yet resolute. Blake, unbothered by the man's sincerity, pointed toward the door with an air of arrogance. His eyes gleamed with thinly veiled contempt. "Have a nice day," he said with a condescending smirk. The man nodded slightly, offering no words of protest. He turned and walked toward the door, the faint chime of the doorbell echoing softly as he exited. Inside, the air remained tense. Blake smirked to himself, satisfied that he had done his duty to maintain the boutique's exclusivity. But little did he know, his decision that day would forever alter his life. Moments later, as Blake stood at his post, still reveling in his self-righteous sense of accomplishment, the tense atmosphere in the store began to dissipate when another customer entered. This time, it was a sophisticated woman named Allison Harper, elegantly dressed in a tailored dark suit, carrying a designer handbag. "Allison, it's been so long!" Rachel Collins, the store manager, approached her with a bright smile. "Hello, Rachel," Allison replied, her gaze sweeping the store instead of focusing on Rachel. She seemed to be searching for something. Or someone. "By the way, I just saw Keanu Reeves outside. He walked in here, didn't he?" Her words struck like lightning. Rachel froze, her smile faltering. Blake, standing nearby, felt a sudden chill run down his spine. He turned to Allison, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Keanu Reeves? Are you talking about the Hollywood star?" Allison looked at him, her expression a mix of shock and disappointment. "You didn't recognize him? Keanu is one of the kindest, most down-to-earth people I've ever met. What did you do? Did you turn him away?" Her words pierced Blake like a dagger. He felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him. The image of the man with the worn leather jacket and gentle eyes flashed through his mind. It was him. Rachel, maintaining her professional demeanor, turned to Blake, her voice low but sharp as a blade. "What did you do? Keanu Reeves walked in here, and how did you treat him?" Blake stammered, struggling to form a coherent response. Words failed him, and the only thing he could feel was a wave of regret crashing over him, drowning him in guilt. Meanwhile, Rachel and Allison stepped aside to discuss the situation in hushed tones. Their words, though quiet, cut through Blake's mind like knives. He caught fragments of their conversation. "What will this do to our reputation? If this gets out, we'll lose our clients." Blake stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. Guilt gripped him tightly as he began to realize the gravity of his mistake. It wasn't just about judging someone based on appearances. He had missed a chance to show kindness, a quality he now understood was far more valuable than any luxury item the boutique could offer. But the story didn't end there. As Blake's thoughts swirled with self-recrimination, a sleek black SUV quietly pulled up outside the boutique. The car door opened, and out stepped the man in the worn leather jacket. This time, there was no mistaking him. Every staff member in the store froze in place. The glass door swung open, and the soft chime of the bell rang out like a gentle reminder of the events that had just unfolded. Keanu Reeves stepped inside, sunlight streaming in behind him, highlighting his calm and unassuming demeanor. The leather jacket, the scuffed boots, they were all the same, but his eyes now carried a quiet determination that made everyone in the boutique hold their breath. Blake stood paralyzed, his legs refusing to move. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as Keanu walked through the store, heading directly toward the center. The staff avoided eye contact, bowing their heads as though Keanu's presence alone was a silent admonishment of the mistake they had witnessed. Rachel Collins hurried forward, her steps betraying her nervousness despite the professional smile she tried to maintain. "Mr. Reeves, I am so sorry for the misunderstanding earlier," she said, her voice trembling yet composed. "We would be honored to assist you. Please allow us to make it right." Keanu offered a small, forgiving smile. There was no anger in his expression, no hint of judgment. He gently shook his head. "I didn't come here looking for special treatment," he said, his voice calm but laced with emotion. "I'm just looking for a gift, something meaningful for someone important to me." Keanu's words instantly silenced the store. The weight of his voice, filled with calm yet undeniable compassion, hung in the air. Blake felt his throat tighten, as though every excuse he might muster had been swallowed by the gravity of Keanu's sincerity. He couldn't take his eyes off the man. Each word pierced through him, making him painfully aware of how shallow his judgments had been and how they had wronged someone with a heart so kind. Rachel, sensing the tension, quickly broke the silence, her voice trembling under the pressure. "Of course, Mr. Reeves, we'd be more than happy to help you. Please, could you tell us who the gift is for?" Keanu paused, his gaze drifting toward a display where a sleek, simple black dress hung elegantly. His voice softened, heavy with a quiet sadness. "It's for someone I lost," he said gently, each word laced with raw emotion. "I know it might sound strange, but choosing a gift like this makes me feel closer to her. It's my way of remembering what truly matters." The room fell into an even deeper silence. Keanu's words resonated with everyone present, not just Blake. The pain he carried didn't need elaborate explanation. It was palpable, a silent testament to the depth of his loss. It wasn't just about grief. It was about learning to live with it, transforming it into meaningful actions to honor cherished memories. Blake, standing in the background, could no longer remain silent. With his heart weighed down by guilt and his hands trembling, he stepped forward. "Mr. Reeves," he began, his voice cracking with remorse. I want to apologize for how I treated you earlier. I judged you based on appearances, and I was wrong. I have no excuse for my behavior." Keanu turned to him, his gentle eyes meeting Blake's. There was no anger, no disdain, only understanding. "We all make mistakes," Keanu said, his voice calm yet profound. "What's important is what we learn from them and how we choose to change afterward." Those words felt like a breath of fresh air to Blake, lifting the oppressive weight on his chest. He bowed his head, deeply moved by the forgiveness extended to him. Yet he realized that words alone weren't enough. He felt an overwhelming need to do something more, to truly atone for his actions and honor the man who had taught him such an invaluable lesson. Rachel, sensing the tension had eased, invited Keanu to sit down and explore more gift options. Meanwhile, Blake stood motionless, his mind racing. A spark of an idea began to form, a small gesture, yet one he hoped would carry great meaning. After Keanu settled on a gift, a classic black dress he believed the person he loved would have adored. Blake remained quietly in the background, grappling with his emotions. Though Keanu had forgiven him, the guilt lingered, urging Blake to go beyond a mere apology. Finally, he decided to act. As Keanu prepared to leave, Blake hurriedly ran after him, clutching a small paper bag. "Mr. Reeves, wait!" Blake called out, his voice trembling with sincerity. Keanu paused, turning back, his kind yet curious gaze resting on the younger man. Blake held out the bag, his hands shaking slightly, as if doubting whether this gesture was enough. "This is just a small gift," Blake said, his voice hesitant but heartfelt. "I know you didn't ask for anything more, but I wanted to give this to you. It's not from this store. It's from a local artisan. She's someone who has also endured loss. I thought you might understand its significance." Keanu opened the bag to reveal a leather bracelet, its design simple yet intricately woven. He held it up, his eyes tracing every detail as though uncovering a hidden story within its fibers. Blake continued, his voice filled with emotion. "She lost her husband a few years ago. Making these bracelets was her way of coping with the pain. I think it's more than just an accessory. It's a part of her journey. And I thought, it might mean something to you." Keanu didn't speak right away. He simply looked at Blake, his deep eyes glimmering with an unmistakable sense of empathy. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice warm and deliberate. "This means a lot to me. The significance behind it is truly special." Blake nodded, feeling as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Yet he didn't realize that this small act of kindness would spark a chain of events far greater than he could ever imagine. A few days later, with the bracelet on his wrist, Keanu found himself unable to stop thinking about the story Blake had shared. Who was the artisan who created this piece? How had she managed to transform her grief into something so beautiful? These thoughts led Keanu to a quiet corner of the city, where a modest stall displayed an array of handcrafted items. Her name was Elise Cooper, a woman in her early 40s whose eyes held both sorrow and strength. When Keanu approached, she looked up and greeted him with a gentle smile, unaware at first of who stood before her. The stall was filled with bracelets, handbags, and other meticulously crafted items, each radiating care and precision. "Hello," Elise said, her voice calm yet warm. "Are you looking for something specific?" Keanu raised his wrist, showing her the bracelet Blake had given him. "I think I've already found it," he replied, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I was told these bracelets carry your story. I'd like to hear it." For a moment, Elise froze, surprised that something so simple had drawn such attention. She slowly sat down, her gaze distant, as if sifting through memories. "I lost my husband 5 years ago," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "He always believed that the smallest things in life held the greatest meaning. After he passed, I couldn't bring myself to create anything for a long time. But then I found one of his old notebooks, filled with small designs he'd sketched. Those little reminders brought me back. They helped me see that life could continue, even if the pain never fully goes away." Keanu listened intently, her words resonating deeply with his own experiences. "You've turned your pain into something truly beautiful," he said softly. "Thank you for sharing this with me." Keanu sat in silence. Elise's story mirrored his own pain like a reflection in a still pond. "You've turned your grief into something beautiful," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for sharing this with me." Their conversation lasted longer than Keanu expected. The two sat in Elise's small workshop, where soft sunlight streamed through the windows, creating a warm and intimate atmosphere. Elise spoke of the days when she couldn't bring herself to work after her husband's passing. The pain had been like a heavy stone, crushing any spark of creativity. But the memories of her loving husband became the very force that pushed her forward. "These bracelets," Elise said, gently holding up another leather creation, "are my way of keeping him close. Every time I weave a strand, I hear his words. Don't give up, Elise. Everything, no matter how small, has meaning. And you know what? Making these bracelets hasn't just healed me, it's brought comfort to others as well. I believe our pain can be the starting point for something beautiful. Keanu remained quiet, his gaze fixed on Elise. Her words touched the deepest part of his soul. Pain is the starting point for something beautiful. He realized this wasn't just her story, it was his too. He nodded slowly, his warm voice almost a whisper. I understand what you're saying. I've also lost someone I loved deeply, my partner and my daughter. There was a time I thought I couldn't go on, but then I realized the only way to keep them close was to do something that honored their memory. Elise lifted her head, her eyes filled with empathy. What did you do to get through it? She asked, her tone gentle, not out of curiosity, but out of genuine care. Keanu paused, his mind wandering through years of memories. I started with small actions, he replied. Helping others, listening to their stories. Every time I did, it felt like I was holding onto a piece of them. Jennifer, my daughter. And now, this bracelet. He lifted his wrist to show her. Reminds me that pain doesn't have to be the end. It can be part of the journey. Elise looked at him for a long moment, her emotions clearly visible in her eyes. You're right, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Maybe us meeting here is part of that journey. I never imagined someone like you, someone who's been through so much, would be sitting here and truly understanding me. But it's amazing how pain can connect us. Keanu smiled, a gentle yet knowing smile that spoke volumes. You're not alone in your pain, and I believe that if we can turn it into something good, the people we've lost would be proud of us. Keanu's words deeply moved Elise. She looked at him, feeling the sincerity in every word he said. This man wasn't just a Hollywood star. He was someone who had faced the depths of loss, just like her, and still found a way to keep moving forward. Mr. Reeves? Elise said hesitantly, mustering the courage to continue. I don't know if this matters to you, but I've always dreamed of expanding what I do. Not just crafting here, but helping others who've gone through what I've been through. The truth is, I don't know where to start. Keanu's eyes lit up with an idea. Elise, you don't have to do it alone. I'd like to help you. You're not just making beautiful crafts, you're creating hope. And hope is something the world needs now more than ever. Elise froze, stunned by his offer. You really want to help me? She asked, her voice trembling with a mix of surprise and gratitude. I don't want to just talk about it, Keanu replied, his voice steady and convincing. I have a foundation. It's designed to help people who are working to overcome hardship. You can start there. Together, we'll find a way to spread the good that comes from your bracelets. Elise smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't felt in years. In that moment, she realized that pain was no longer a burden she carried alone. It had become a bridge, a connection to others who shared her story. A few weeks after their conversation in Elise's tiny workshop, great things began to take shape. True to his word, Keanu not only funded, but actively helped Elise create a new workspace. It wasn't just a modern crafting studio. It was a haven for artisans who had endured trauma, a place where they could find healing through art. On the morning of the grand opening, the soft winter sunlight streamed through the windows of the new studio. Elise stood in the spacious room, surrounded by beautifully displayed bracelets, handbags, and other handcrafted items. Her heart swelled with a mix of joy and nervous anticipation. The painful days of her past now felt like a distant story. Keanu arrived, his unassuming demeanor paired with an air of quiet strength. He walked over to Elise, his gentle gaze carrying encouragement. You've done it, he said, his voice calm and warm. I played a small part. This is all your effort. Elise smiled, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. Without you, I don't know if I'd have had the courage to do this. You helped me see that pain doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of something meaningful. As the guests mingled and admired the space, An elderly woman with silvery hair approached Elise. She held one of the bracelets from the display, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," the woman said softly. "This bracelet reminds me of my husband. He passed away 2 years ago. But when I look at this, I feel like he's still here." Elise's throat tightened with emotion. She gently took the woman's hands, feeling the connection the bracelet had brought. Keanu stood nearby, observing the moment with a quiet smile. His expression softened even further, reflecting the profound impact of the work Elise had created. This is the meaning behind it, Keanu thought, bringing people together, even through the smallest things. A few days later, Keanu invited Elise to a special event he was hosting. It was an art exhibition showcasing creations made by artisans from Elise's workshop. Elise was astonished to see the large crowd in attendance. Business people, artists, and everyday individuals all drawn together, seeking comfort and inspiration through art. Keanu stepped onto the small stage, his calm yet emotional voice filling the room. "We all carry stories in our hearts," he began. "Stories that can be full of pain, but also full of inspiration. Today, I want you to meet people who have transformed their pain into something beautiful." He extended his hand toward Elise, who stood quietly amidst the crowd. Elise Cooper is one of those people. She has endured loss, but she refused to let it define her life. Instead, she turned it into inspiration, creating works that touch all of our hearts. The room erupted into applause. Elise bowed her head, her heart swelling with emotion. This wasn't just personal recognition. It was the joy of seeing her work resonate with others, touching lives far beyond what she had imagined. After the event, Keanu and Elise collaborated on several other projects. Elise expanded her efforts beyond crafting, opening free vocational training classes for widows and those who had lost loved ones, helping them find joy in creating something meaningful. Her workshop became a community hub where people shared their stories and rediscovered strength within themselves. Throughout this journey, Keanu remained a steadfast supporter, often working quietly behind the scenes. He avoided the media spotlight, but his actions spoke louder than any words, proving that kindness doesn't need to be grandiose to make a lasting impact. One day, Elise received a letter from a 14-year-old girl living in another state. The girl wrote about how her mother had once received a bracelet crafted by Elise. That simple bracelet became a source of strength, helping her mother through a difficult period in her life. "I don't know who you are," the girl wrote, "but I just want to thank you for creating something like this." Elise couldn't hold back tears as she read the letter. She shared the story with Keanu, who smiled warmly. "This is why we do what we do," he said. "Every small act, every piece you create, can be a beacon of light for someone in their darkest moments." That evening, Keanu and Elise stood by the ocean, at the very spot they often visited to find peace. The endless blue stretched out before them, the waves lapping gently against the shore like the steady rhythm of life itself. Keanu turned to Elise, his gaze thoughtful yet full of warmth. "Elise, you've accomplished so much, but this journey doesn't end here." Elise smiled, her eyes glinting with determination. "You're right. We'll keep going, because there are so many more stories to tell, and so many more people who need hope." As the sun set behind them, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, they stood together in silence. Their journey, though rooted in pain, had blossomed into something far greater, proof that even the smallest gestures of kindness could spark endless waves of change. This is what it's all about, Keanu thought, bringing people together, even through the smallest things. A few days later, Keanu invited Elise to a special event he was organizing. It was an art exhibition showcasing the creations made by artisans from Elise's workshop. Elise was amazed to see the large crowd, business people, artists, and everyday individuals, all drawn by the hope and comfort that art could provide. Keanu stepped onto the small stage, his calm yet emotional voice commanding attention. "We all carry stories within our hearts," he began. "Stories that may be filled with pain but also hold incredible potential to inspire. Today, I want you to meet people who have turned their pain into something beautiful." He extended his hand toward Elise, who stood quietly among the crowd. Elise Cooper is one of those people. She has endured loss, but she didn't let it define her life. Instead, she turned it into inspiration, creating works that touch all of our hearts. The room erupted into applause. Elise bowed her head, her heart swelling with emotion. This wasn't just personal recognition. It was the joy of knowing her work had reached far beyond her own life, touching countless others. After the event, Keanu and Elise continued collaborating on various projects. Elise expanded her work beyond crafting, creating free vocational training programs for widows and others who had lost loved ones. Through these classes, they found joy and purpose in creating something meaningful. Her workshop became a lively community, a space where people shared their stories and found strength through connection. Keanu remained a steadfast supporter throughout the journey, often working behind the scenes. He avoided the spotlight, but his actions spoke volumes, proving that kindness doesn't need attention to be impactful. One day, Elise received a letter from a 14-year-old girl living in another state. The girl wrote about how her mother had once received a bracelet crafted by Elise. That simple bracelet became a source of strength, helping her mother navigate a difficult chapter in her life. "I don't know who you are," the girl wrote, "but I just want to thank you for creating something like this." Elise couldn't hold back her tears as she read the letter. She shared the story with Keanu, who smiled warmly. "This is why we do this," he said. "Every small act, every piece you create, can be a beacon of light for someone in their darkest moments." Keanu and Elise continued to dream bigger. "I think we can do more," Keanu said one day, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. "Not just art centers, but traveling exhibitions, where people can share their stories and experiences. We could bring hope and creativity to even more places." Elise was initially surprised by the idea, but quickly realized its potential. "I love it," she said, her eyes sparkling with conviction. "It's not just about healing. It's about connecting distant communities and bringing them closer together." The new initiative was named Stories Through Hands. It showcased individual stories through handmade crafts, paintings, and music. Keanu, as a co-founder, not only provided funding but also participated in the events, listening to stories and meeting people from all walks of life. At a special event in New York, Elise and Keanu stood before a large crowd, where countless handcrafted pieces were displayed. Among the most prominent booths was one run by Mia. The young girl, who had once been shy and reserved, was now an inspiration, guiding other children to find comfort through art. Mia stepped onto the stage, holding a bracelet she had made on the day she first met Keanu. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes radiated confidence. "I never thought I'd be standing here today," she began, her voice soft yet strong. "But I've learned that grief doesn't have to be the end. It's a part of who I am, and because of it, I've been able to create something meaningful." The audience rose to their feet, applauding warmly. Elise watched Mia with pride, while Keanu stood nearby, offering a gentle smile. This wasn't just an event. It was a powerful affirmation that kindness, art, and connection could truly change the world. Over time, the Stories Through Hands exhibitions traveled across the country, from bustling cities to quiet small towns. Everywhere they went, they carried messages of hope, compassion, and the transformative power of art. Keanu and Elise were not only the founders, but also active participants, listening to stories and connecting with countless lives. The project touched the hearts of thousands, uniting people through stories that seemed unique but shared a universal rhythm. At the final exhibition of the year, held in a historic church in Boston, Elise stood amidst a room bathed in warm light. Every handcrafted piece, bracelets, paintings, and sculptures, told a story of pain transformed into healing. Keanu stood quietly in a corner, watching the scene with a gentle smile. Elise stepped onto the stage, her eyes shining with emotion. She looked around at the audience, her voice trembling with gratitude as she spoke. "I want to thank each of you for sharing your stories," she said. "When I started this journey, I never imagined it would reach this far. But I've realized that the miracle isn't in the items we create. The miracle is in how we connect with each other through these stories." Keanu joined her on stage, taking the microphone. His deep, steady voice filled the room. "Elise is right. The things we go through are never meaningless. Every pain, every loss can become a source of strength if we choose to share and let it ripple outward. This journey isn't the end. It's just one chapter in a much bigger story, a story where each of you is the main character." As the exhibition came to an end, Keanu and Elise stepped outside, where the glimmering city lights reflected off the rain-slicked streets. They didn't say a word, but both knew that their journey wouldn't stop here. Every connection they had built, every story they had shared, would continue to ripple outward, touching even more hearts. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. The journey of Keanu and Elise isn't just about art. It's about kindness, connection, and the strength to overcome loss. Have you ever experienced pain or found hope in the small acts of kindness from others? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear from you because every story holds value and can inspire someone else. If you believe that stories like this need to be shared more often, click the like button and share this video with your loved ones. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss more heartwarming stories like this. By supporting us, you're not just helping spread a message, you're becoming part of this emotional journey. Let's continue creating unforgettable memories, stories, and moments together. Thank you for being here and walking this journey with us. Subscribe here, your story channel. Help this story reach even more hearts.